Kill the music now. Now I want everybody to take a good long look at this crap that we're in. You see, I used to do quite a lot of political talk about the newspapers, and largely about how the press censorship and how they handle certain issues in this country are, well, for the most part, I'd say nearly 80 to 85% are completely biased and absolutely support the right-wing majority, as we call it. I don't really understand much about what the majority means anymore, because, to be honest, if anybody was actually openly saying they were a Tory supporter, I can't necessarily think of how many questions I would love to ask about why they support the Tories, in spite of all the scandals, the press, the deterioration in people's trust in maybe not just politicians in general, but at the very least the ones who have caused all the problems. People have been literally saying, again, and this is a good point, as whenever it comes to the subject of politics, one popular one keeps going out, why didn't, Keir Starmer get Jimmy Savile in prison? Well, why is this literally all down to, Keir Starmer's problem? I say, what about all the other people who probably try to get him convicted? What about the fact that people like, Margaret Thatcher and Prince Charles and, Prince Philip were heavily around Jimmy Savile during his reign of terror? And if you're really trying to tell me that literally saying, but what about this, the look over there strategy is the best you got by saying, we shouldn't go to this side because A, B, and C, because they know. I secretly I've sort of figured out that people who are maybe in spirit defend the Tories, unfortunately don't really make a good case out of it, because it's not that their cases don't, discourage me from necessarily thinking about them any different. If anything, I despise them more than ever. But what about the fact that, it doesn't change anything? And that's what's always worried me in this day and age, ladies and gentlemen, is that no matter how much we do, or I do, or any of us do, it doesn't actually change anything. You always get this nihilistic point of view when it comes to politics, that no matter how good or how pure or how selfless our intentions are, you know what? It means absolutely nothing, because it won't change, because maybe secretly people want a conservative government forever, because they don't want really things to change, because they see a Marxist, socialist future to resemble something like resorting to the human brain being in a bottle for the rest of their lives. That's what they secretly imagine the future is going to look like when Marxism or communism rules the world. In fact, somebody even once asked me if we had a communist regime tomorrow, and we had Keir Starmer, for example, Sir Keir Starmer as our champion, then would we even accept it if he has a knighthood? Well, and I kind of secretly always wanted to say this back, because it does raise a good point, is that yes, in terms of principle, people would say that he should reject his title of knighthood and stuff like that. But at the same time, you always got to think about something like this. What if we had a communist regime tomorrow and it completely, revolutionized this country and we became known as the United Republic? You always have to remember this, is that we are still British people. And what are some of the characteristics of British people? I mean, yes, again, maybe on principle, it would make sense to, relinquish a knighthood and stuff like that. But at the same time, then would anybody else be recognised or highly appreciative of their contributions, their workings into society? It's not necessarily a very easy issue when it's at that point of view, and that's maybe again some of the leniencies do come out. Maybe in some ways we do want to be recognised for our achievements, and we want what's best for everyone. So is it even the answer there? It is a heavily contested issue, but the case still stands. Do you really think we're going to get anywhere with this government? I mean, really? And I've said this for the last 2 weeks, and I will say it until I am blue in the face as opposed to red. Every single day that goes by, I am more and more convinced in my mind that Sunak is actually worse than Liz Truss. Because, and this is a big because, Sunak is not mending anything. He's not stepping up to the mark for the failings and the errors that from Truss, Johnson, May, all the way to Cameron. Or you can even go even further to Gordon Brown and Tony Blair and, John Major, Thatcher. You could go almost as far back as, Bono or David Lloyd George, for example, nearly over 100 years ago. You could literally make arguments easily that things have not improved in standards since then. We've just made the best out of a pretty bad situation. But then comes the next part of what I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is to be expected. When we have a whole two governments now in the last 6 months, that have been a result of there's been no election, there's been there's no statement from the general public, because secretly I think they know that no matter how badly the press will trash Labour, or the press will trash the Lib Dems, or the Green Party, or the Socialists, or the Anarchists, or even National Action, they know fine well that they won't come through. Because are you really trying to tell me that you see? I have this very, very important thing I want to tell you, guys, ladies and gentlemen, is that you set your own bar in life. You set the standard for how you want your life to go down, and maybe for how lives of hundreds of thousands of people will go down. And when you're in a position of power, you have that responsibility. You have that authority. You have that power. You have that control. And you have that influence. Not like people like me, maybe not people like you. But like I said, you set your own bar in life, and Rishi Sunak is that it? Is that as high as it gets? Are you really trying to tell me that Sunak is the best we could do? Really? Because I don't think so. That, you know what, if it's anything to go by, I've never voted Conservative in my life. I've voted Labour, and I've been a member of the British Labour Party since 2017, and have remained so to this day. Even under Jeremy Corbyn, and now under Sir Keir Starmer. And probably even under Rachel Reeves or Angela Rayner, when I think they would make a beeline if they wanted to run as the next Labour leader. Because remember, election season is only in 2 years away, when at long last the general public are actually going to have the authority, the power, the influence, the control, and their say on who they actually want to run their country. And I don't think it could have come at a better time, ladies and gentlemen, because the way things stand right now, I'll level with you, are bad. They are really bad. I was at a teaching protest rally in Gray's Monument earlier today, and it speaks volumes about how riled up the crowd were, and about how passionate everybody was. I spoke to a lot of people earlier this afternoon, and despite the fact that the Daily Mail are gaslighting teachers by saying that they are taking away from, children's education and children's future, every single person I spoke to right there, they were the most friendliest, the most compassionate, the most thoughtful people towards children's futures. I am absolutely making that as plain as day, ladies and gentlemen. I was there. I spoke to people. I saw with my own eyes. Again, let me tell you something right now, ladies and gentlemen. My dad worked 40 years in education, and I've worked in a job centre for the last 3 years. You would be very, very surprised about how much you actually can learn by just using your eyes, by just seeing things and not just taking one source and literally claim it as fact and gospel. Many of these people were parents, ladies and gentlemen. Many of these people who've been teaching for 20 years. Many of these people who couldn't even afford to start a family. Many of the people who had their kids and Bens with them. Many of these people who had only been teaching for 12 months and they were already on strike. So the next time, ladies and gentlemen, you actually want to start blaming teachers by saying they're taken away from, their children's futures, just remember the people that push them to do this. Always remember that it's not just on the teachers or on the nurses or any of the ambulance staff or any of the firefighters or any of the doctors or any of the civil servants who are just doing this just so they can have a day off and just have a rally round together in the hopes of pushing the unions. Because that's one of the things that secretly the Daily Mail, and you have to admit, ladies and gentlemen, this is nothing new for the Daily Mail, they supported Hitler. Their actions, not mine. They actually supported Hitler. And one of the first things that Hitler was doing when he became Chancellor? Got rid of the unions. Got rid of the union leaders as well. I'm telling you now, ladies and gentlemen, that's the road we're heading down now. If you actually want to stop this, ladies and gentlemen, may I make some suggestions? Because I want to continue making videos like this because I want to speak candidly and openly and honestly about what I think, about what I feel, not just from the point of view from a left-wing Labour Party member, but I also want to hear from you guys. I want to learn. I want to get better at what I do. I do not want to live in arrogance. I don't want to live in ignorance. I don't want to live in fear. And I do not want to live with regret either. I want to be more Clement Attlee than whatever the hell Rishi Sunak, Cameron, May, Johnson, Major. I do not want to aspire to be any of those people. I want to aspire to be men like Clement Attlee. Perhaps the single greatest Prime Minister who ever lived. And he's probably also one of the most humble as well. That's another big thing as well. You begin to recognise, instantly from the presentation of this government. They are not very humble and they are not very sympathetic people. I'm saying that now, ladies and gentlemen, because I do not really think I'm lying either. And I don't think many people would exaggerate that, say that's just a lie either. You know what? There you go. You know what? And just to conclude this, ladies and gentlemen, I said about 2 months ago that the mantra for my life was going to be from now on, work or die. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, even more important than being a Labour Party member, even more important than being a Geordie, even more important than voting for Labour or being in solidarity with the unions, with the teaching staff and all the rest of it. More important than any of that, I am a Motorhead fan. I am a heavy metal fan. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? It's not work or die. It is march or die. Courage, my friends. Courage all the way.